Well, today I'm going to show you a few examples like we already hear today about the irradiation methods and why are they used. At the Croatian State Archives, etc. Laboratory for Conservation and Restoration, we're trying to protect as much as we can that after the disastrous flooding and fire, as you already heard, we try to prevent mold growing or insects happening. So I will tell you a little bit about the preventive protection and then about gamma irradiation and our collaboration with the colleagues at Institute Ruđer Bošković. So first, something about the Central Laboratory for Conservation and Restoration. There are 18 employees there. We have two departments, the Conservation and Restoration Department and the Bookbinder Department. Cultural heritage that we restore are mostly books, like 90% of the overall cultural heritage, we restore books. Smaller amount of these are geographical maps, plans, photographies, charters, etc. Included in our laboratory, we have a center for salvaging archival material after disasters. You could see that on the movie that was going last 2 days. And what we do there, I'm just going to go shortly how we try to prevent the disaster on the books that happened after flooding. So we know that when we have flooding, when we have fire, it all contributes to wet books. Fire also because when firefighters enter the building, they usually don't have time to react. And at least here in Croatia, in our neighboring countries, we still have wet books after fire, which leads, of course, to the growth of the mold, fungi, and bacteria. So how do we try to prevent those growth of mold, fungi, and bacteria? At the center, we have big freezing chambers. We have drying devices that heats up the room, the type of the drying that heats up the whole room, and it dries at high temperature and certain relative humidity, up to 60 degrees Celsius and 35 relative humidity. This whole room is highly ventilated. So every second there is a damp air coming out and the cool and dry air coming inside the room. And of course, we have the lyophilization chamber, freeze drying chamber. As you could already see in the movie, if we do not get the completely wet books, we just sometimes we have to freeze them before we can use them in a lyophilization chamber, but almost always after some floodings or after fire, we get the wet books. And there are large quantity of the books, as you can see on this screen. This is not the biggest quantity we ever got, but it's actually also a large quantity of the books. We have to act fast. We have to freeze them so we can gradually dry them. We can't dry enormous quantities of books at the same time. So we use two big freezing chambers where we freeze the books for later drying. On the left picture, you can see this machine that I told you about, the drying of the whole room. And these are the storages in that room, which we use. So as I said, the whole room is highly ventilated and it dries the books, but it's mostly used for the large quantities of not valuable books, if I can say it like that. It doesn't cost a lot like lyophilization chamber. It's very expensive because it lasts, the drying process at lyophilization chamber dries long last, so it's quite expensive. This is the lyophilization chamber. You also saw it on the movie. It works on the principle of low pressure and low temperature. The pressure gets so low that if you remember the phase diagram of the water, you can, the crystals of ice are directly sublimated to air. So there is no wet phase. It is very important that we do not have wet phase because it's the most destroying phase for the books. And we usually use it for very valuable books, like books with wooden boards, books with metal clasp or metal parts of the book. It's especially good for them because if you don't have wet phase, you don't have the deformation of the wooden board, you don't have the corrosion of the metal clasps, you don't have the dissolution of text. It's really good. It's great for the books, great for the ending process, but it It's quite expensive, it's quite long. Approximately for books that it's a book that is like 10 centimeters thick, it lasts for 10 days. I'm just going to say quickly a little bit more about lyophilization. As you heard in the movie, probably it lasts from, it has 3 phases. The first one is freezing. If the books aren't already frozen before that, we use the blast freezing in our freezers. So the crystals that are made are very small. If you prolong freezing for a longer period of time, bigger crystals appear that are more damaging to the cellulose. The second phase of the lyophilization is primary drying, which is the removing of non-bound water in the material. So it's the water that ended in the book by the flooding, and it's the longest process of the lyophilization. And the third process is the secondary drying, where we remove the bound water from the book, all the water that bound to the material. And it is very important not to prolong the secondary drying too long, because you will lose the 30% of the bound water that is needed in material. So every paper has at least 30% bound water in the material to look normal, to behave normal. If you dry too much, if you remove more than 30%, the paper will become very dry and fragile. As I already said, we encounter a lot of biological, microbiological damaged books. If we cannot prevent it, as I just said, then we are working with our colleagues at the Radiation Chemistry and Dosimetry Laboratory at the Ruđer Bošković Institute. Branka is one of the colleagues that we work with. Also, if we encounter insects in our damaged paper or boards. We take it, we've worked with them for a longer period of time, and we didn't use it so much on paper because of the different types of paper and the damage that we could more likely or less likely do. We do not know with the irradiation, but we do it constantly with the wooden boards, because we know that wood is less susceptible to the damage from the irradiation. And later on, I will show you some examples of wooden boards that we disinfected in that way. As it said here, the boards are irradiated with gamma rays of radioactive cobalt isotope CO60. The colleagues from Ruđer Bošković already told you a lot about that. The dosage to kill the insects is 2 kilograms, and it's enough to kill all the insects in any type of their lifetime, from larva to adult. And the dosage is also adjusted a little bit bigger if we use it to kill the mold, bacteria, or fungi on the boards or paper. Here are some examples of biological damaged books from insects that we encountered in Croatian State Archives. These books were pretty badly damaged, and since the restoration process of these books, every conservative restorer of the books knows that you have to go through every piece of paper, every leaf, so everything is cleaned there. So we didn't have the need to irradiate the paper itself, but we definitely wanted to irradiate the wooden boards, so there are no insects left inside the boards. After we restore the paper, conserve the boards, put them back on the book, and then insects again in the boards can do the damage that already did. These are some examples of microbiological damaged books. You can see mold, fungi, and bacteria. A lot of examples were today about the earthquake in Croatia. We still have like 3 or 4 floodings a year, and it's mostly because during spring and summer, where there are quick and big storms, and like a few hours, they get out above the city, and there is a lot of rain in very small amount of time falling down on the city. And there people are calling us from museums, from libraries, that they have flooding. They have their pumps didn't work. We had such examples last summer. We'll probably gonna have it again this summer. And it's all about the quickness of the people that work there. If they contact us quickly, we can arrange freezing of this material, we can arrange drying. If it's not, then usually what you see on the lower pictures happen. there is incredible growth of mold on these books. These are some of more examples of damaged books which didn't contact us immediately, and you can see that actually the water and the fungi and the mold eat through the book. And at the lower example, lower right example, there are some more examples. This is one of the nicest things we did at the conservation and restoration of this very valuable book. This is actually the statue of Dubrovnik from 1437. And this, you can see here, the pictures are before conservation and restoration. These boards were irradiated at the Institute Ruđer Bošković, I think, to remove any residues of insects inside of the boards. This is not the oldest statue from Dubrovnik, state of Dubrovnik, but the oldest one was lost. So this was the ceremonial book that was used for almost 600 years, and is the oldest book that they have, the oldest statue they have, example statue they have now in their depository. I put the example of this book shortly, the whole restoration process. So as you can see, I'm gonna go back. This book had a wrong type of the spine. As you can see on the picture, someone reworked the spine during the years, and there were these green things that someone sewed that on. It's late 20th century, late 19th century, early 20th century type of binding, which is not correspondent to 15th century binding. And we removed the parchment leaves from the book. And on the lower left picture, you can see there were 4 types of binding on this board through history of this book. So it was repaired at least 4 times that we know it. So we decided to sew the book as we presume it was sewn in the 15th century. This is the oldest example of the sewing we found on these boards of the statue of Dubrovnik, which was the 4 double raised bands, leather raised bands. And as you can see, we sew them on the parchment leaves. And since there is a lot of time for these slides, I could show you more pictures, but I just choose like 8 pictures to see. This is the book that how it looks at the end. So we cleaned and restored the metal parts, the wooden boards, conserved the wooden boards after they were irradiated, and also reconstructed all the metal parts that were missing on this precious book. And I have here just 2 more examples of irradiated boards. As you can see here, we removed the whole board because it was too badly damaged. It was very fragile, so it couldn't be used on the book again after conservation. But we nevertheless irradiated these wooden boards and returned them to the owner. And here we have an interesting example of a liturgical book of Ruđer Bošković from Venice. Interesting here, this is one of the oldest type of the bindings. It's actual Byzantine binding, which is very rare. And when we received the book, it was interesting that the insects only ate the wooden boards, and they ate it completely. There were mostly dust left. They didn't touch the leather, they didn't touch the paper, but they only eat books. And after we put the new boards inside of the book, because you can see that the old ones weren't usable, we returned the book to them. And after a few years, we got the book back again. And again, only boards were missing because the owner returned it to the same shelf where it was infected with worms. So after we put another type of board inside of the book, and we asked the owner not to return it and to irradiate the whole segment of books that they have at that depository, because it was infected by insects. This is just one of the examples that we use in collaboration with the Institute Ruđer Bošković. That would be all. Thanks for your attention.